welcome to our session. We're just waiting for quite a few more people to arrive, actually. We're expecting a good amount of people in the room this afternoon. We've been told around, well, 100 and something, so we'll just get cracking in a moment, but you're very welcome and thanks for tuning in to our session this afternoon. During the session, you're going to be finding out about the German Quiz Challenge. So it's an introductory session, and also the supporting materials and resources that are available. And we're hoping by the end of the session, you're going to feel inspired to try it with your pupils. Or if you're not teaching at the moment yourself, but just curious to find out more, we hope you'll be inspired to pass on the information to any friends and contacts who might be teaching German in a secondary school. So we're really glad to have you here, and we thought it would be a good idea just to introduce ourselves as we continue to welcome people into the room. My name is Domini Stone, and I'm Manager for Educational Links at the Goethe-Institut in London, and work in the Teachers Services department there. And in that department, we're busy supporting German in primary and secondary schools, and run a number of programs, initiatives and activities to motivate youngsters to want to learn German and to support teachers too. So that's me.
And I'm Lorna Price. I'm Project Assistant in the Educational Services Department at the Goethe-Institut London, and I work with Domini on a variety of different projects, one of which is the German Quiz Challenge. And we're also here with Emma Whittle.
Thank you, Lorna. So my name's Emma Whittle, and my main job is subject leader for German at Dr. Challoner's Boys Grammar School in Amersham, for those of you who know that. And I, over the last, gosh, it must be nearly 10 years, I think, I've also been working on projects with the Goethe-Institut. And for quite a number of years, it was really based with Key Stage 2 German. So I was behind the Felix und Franzi materials and Carlo and Kai, for those of you who've done any work with Key Stage 2. And then in more recent years, I've been working on projects to do with secondary German. So I've been lucky enough to help to write the content for the German Quiz Challenge, which we're going to talk to you about today, as well as being involved in Speak Up German, which is done on Zoom now, and that's something for sixth formers to be able to practice their presentation skills and their speaking. So I'm really looking forward to speaking about the German Quiz Challenge, and really excited that it's now an app and it's now accessible to to students all over the world, in fact, not just in the UK.
And our presentation is going to be in English, the whole thing, and we will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A tab. So there will be time at the end of the presentation to ask questions. So just wanted to make you aware, but please feel free as we go through the presentation to ask away, and hopefully by the end you'll have a lot more information than now about the German Quiz Challenge. So what is the German Quiz Challenge? Well, to whet your appetites, we've got a very short trailer to play. As Emma said, it's now published as an app, and we're really pleased about that. And you might have noticed in the classroom you've just seen, there were only a few students. It was a rather socially distanced classroom set up there, But the good news about this app and the German Quiz Challenge is you can play it with a small group of students, and you can also play it up to 30 students in a class. We would have loved to have played a bit of the game with you all today, but unfortunately we can't play with more than 30 in a room, and we wouldn't want to crash the system completely. So yeah, so that's something to bear in mind as we go forward. So let's look a bit at the background to the game now. So what is it and how did it come about? Well, the German Quiz Challenge is the second learning and online assessment tool that the Goethe-Institut London has developed in cooperation with Ovos Media. Now, Ovos Media is a company based in Austria, in Vienna. And some of you may be thinking, well, what was the first online assessment tool? That's actually something called the Language Magician. And some of you in the room might already be familiar with the Language Magician. That's a fun and motivational assessment tool aimed at primary school children, available in 5 different languages. So German, French, Spanish, Italian, and English, and was developed with partners in 10 different partners covering 5 different countries. So the German Quiz Challenge built on what was developed in during the Language Magician, but is primarily for German learners and aimed at secondary school pupils, so those between the ages of 13 and 16. In case some of you are thinking, oh, that's quite a broad age range. Well, when we were developing the German Quiz Challenge as a project, we worked with partners in other Goethe institutes in Northwest Europe, so in Scandinavia, the Netherlands, and Ireland. And in those countries, at secondary level, some pupils start learning German a little earlier. So that's why this age bracket encompasses all those countries involved in the project. And although it was based around, for example, GCSE topics and all the language content covered by GCSE, it's certainly not limited to that. And the interesting thing about the German Quiz Challenge, it really draws on the curriculums of those other countries too, and what youngsters in that age range are learning about in the classroom. So what was the main aim of the German Quiz Challenge? Well, first of all, it aims to help the teachers to be able to monitor the progress of their students, but in a kind of straightforward way, which doesn't require much work on the teacher's part. And for the pupils, it's a motivational tool where they play along, they are being assessed, and similar to the Language Magician for primary students, they're hopefully having lots of fun doing it and not really realizing they're being assessed. So it kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. And I think the emphasis really should be on stress-free diagnostic testing for the pupils, and also stress-free for the teachers. Now, we know, as with anything you're introducing in your classroom involving technology, that can be a little stressful. So one of the aims of our presentation today is to try and show you how you could implement it into the classroom, and look at also the support available. What does it assess? Well, the pupils have a variety of tasks to do, which are assessing them in their vocabulary, their understanding. There are tasks in listening, reading and writing. And it's really set at a level A2 in the Common European Framework for Languages. So that's something for us to bear in mind too. And we recommend that teachers play it twice a year. So kind of at the beginning of the academic year is a good idea, and also at the end. So you can monitor your students' progress and see how they're coming along. And And as we said, it's available as an app, but can be accessed via the web browser too. And pupils can play on a computer, a laptop, an iPad, or their personal device. We know sometimes in schools it's not always possible and pupils aren't always allowed to play on their personal device, but it is geared up so they could if that is possible. Okay, so we're now going to look at the structure of the game, and I'm going to hand you over to Lorna, who will tell you a little bit more about that.
Yes, so the game is structured in two different phases. So it alternates between a focus phase, which is quiet game-based learning that's done on the students' individual devices. And in the focus phase, they have their headphones in and they are answering questions similar to the ones that you see on the screen, which assess their abilities in listening, reading, and writing. These focus phases are then interspersed with challenge phases, which is sort of loud team-based play, and they answer questions on the teacher screen. So each of the sessions on the personal devices is linked to a teacher screen, which you can not only monitor the students' progress via, but also displays the questions for the group play in the challenge phases. Now, the full length of the game has 4 focus phases and 4 challenge phases, and the full game lasts around 40 minutes. But you can adapt the length of the game by choosing which particular chapters you would like to play, therefore shortening the game in total. And you can find more details about that in particular in our teacher resources in the handbook, which I think Domini will talk a little bit about later. So the content of the game is structured as follows. In the first focus phase, you have an introduction to the 5 friends. All the themes are centered around 5 friends who share a love for skateboarding and live in Munich. And through this topic, we explore a variety of different subjects. So the first of these is an introduction to the friends. Who are they? What do they like? What are their hobbies? That's followed then by a challenge phase of general knowledge questions. We then have our second focus phase, which is more quiet listening, reading and writing questions about everyday situations, for example, at the coffee shop, theft, poverty and pollution. And then the third and fourth, or 3A and 3B, challenge phases move to talk about traveling in Europe and the travels of the friends abroad. So they go and visit their friends in Denmark, for example. They also have a trip to Germany. So, and again, each of these focus phases is followed by a challenge phase, which we find motivates the students and keeps them focused and engaged throughout the gaming session. You can see here on the left the sort of results that each pupil receives at the end of the gaming session. You can see that it's quite positive feedback. You get, the number of correct tasks, the number of incorrect tasks, and the number of tasks that they're left to complete. And on the right, you can see the live, what it would look like during a live session on the teacher dashboard. So you get live feedback as a teacher as to how each of the students are doing. You can also refer back to this interactive dashboard after the session. It's always available to come back to. And you can not only track how well each of the students did, but you can also work through those questions again in a teaching session if you wanted to, and explore the kinds of things that were more, that some of your students might have found more difficult or more challenging. And you can see here some of the feedback that we had from our testing phase. This particular feedback was from a school in Wales, which we piloted in just before lockdown. You can see that they found it challenging, but that it was fun. Interestingly, we found they particularly enjoyed being able to hear native speakers, as well as the team play aspect of the game as well. So I'm now going to hand over to Emma. I think Emma's used the game herself, and she's going to tell you a little bit about how you can access the game.
Yeah, so we at Dr. Chandler's, we were lucky enough to do some piloting, so right at the beginning. And I suppose, like probably most of you here, when it's something that's new, a new technology or a new game, you're sort of maybe a bit worried about doing it with the class, because we all hate it when technology goes wrong, and it can be so stressful. So in our first session, I decided to play the game just with a small group of year 10. So I think I probably had 12 or 13 in that group, just because it was the first time when we were piloting it. And we had a mixture of devices. So the headmaster had to give permission for some of the boys to, if they wanted to use their mobile phones. And I think they quite liked the fact that there was something a bit different in the classroom being able to do that. And others used iPads, some used laptops. So it's a real mixture of devices that we use there. And then I got a bit braver after that, and I thought, okay, so that worked. There weren't too many teething problems there. And then tried it with a whole year 11 class actually shortly after that. So I think there were around 24 in that class, so a much bigger class. And all I can say is what really works for me, and I'm sure that many of you know this, you know, when you're setting a piece of a listening or a reading, that the amount of time they can actually stay focused when they're in a classroom setting and it's not an exam, you know, 10 minutes is probably a good time actually. So that's what I really like about this game, is that they have this the focus phase for 10 minutes. So they do a listening comprehension, a reading comprehension, and it's great because the classroom is really quiet because they're really focused on trying to get a really good score for themselves. And then they come together in this challenge phase, and suddenly they're in these two teams, and there are short true false questions, just sort of general knowledge and stuff about football, stuff about music, you know, sort of geography questions about German speaking countries. And then all they have to do is put a right or wrong, a true or false. And then that you can see the scores going into the two different teams. And then it becomes really exciting. And suddenly, you know, that nice calm atmosphere turns into what we like in the language classroom, where everyone's sort of getting quite excited as they see which team is winning. And then after we've done that, then they go back to their focus phase again and go on to their next listening or reading comprehension. So for me, for those year 11s and for the year 10s, I tried it with, I find it really motivational. And, you know, we talk about stress-free at the moment. It's kind of a key thing, isn't it, for us all? We've got so much to think about. And actually having a lesson where the students are really focused as they are in the focus phase on a you know, good GCSE type listening or reading task, I think it's a really motivational tool, and especially as they have the challenge phase in between, so they can really have that competitive thing, just like a Quizlet Live. I'm sure many of you have played that, and it's that kind of thing really. So it's a mixture of those two things. So the reaction was really, really, really positive. I would say that this can also be used as a platform for other things, as a springboard. You know, we'll talk about this later, but materials wise, teachers have access to the whole transcript. And I know when I do listenings, I'm sure it's the same for you, it's really handy to have the transcript and then to go over and see where the students went wrong and pick up on any mistakes, and then before playing it maybe for the second time later on in the year. So I'm going to talk to you now about getting started. So as I referred to before, I started small because I was a little bit nervous about whether it would work or not. But I would say to you that even though you may be thinking, oh, it sounds a bit complicated, the different steps you have to take, it really is much more straightforward than you would think. So, so the game can be accessed through any computer browser, and obviously they have access to the app as well on the App Store that the students must install on their smartphones or tablets or whatever device they're going to use. So I've used, so putting it into the computer browser, it's really easy. You just use the link and there you are, you're suddenly on the page that the teacher set up, and you set it up from there. So the steps are, you need to register. So when you go to, when you put this in your browser, it will ask you to register on there. So that's a really quick thing to do. And then you need to choose a blueprint. So let me just explain that to you. I think it was, yes, Domini and Lorna have gone through the fact that there are, or Lorna said about the different chapters. So depending on how much time you have in a lesson, you can choose to maybe just do one chapter, which would be 8 minutes altogether, and then you've got the challenge after that to take up a bit of time. So that's what you might choose to do in that one lesson. You may choose to do all 3 of the blueprints, and you can select that when you're setting up the session, and you get an activation code just like you would do on a Kahoot or a Quizlet Live, you've got this code. And just like those other games that we use, you invite your students to download, first of all, the app, and then you give them this code and you get them to register. They then create a profile and they pick their team. Now, some people have asked in the past, well, if they can pick their own team, what happens if suddenly you get loads on one team and not very many on the other? And then for the teacher, you can just easily kind of allocate people if you need to change people around and change the teams, you can do that. So yes, as I said before, you get this code just like a Quizlet Live, and this code starts the game, and then the class are ready to play, to play the game and to learn from this assessment tool. Yes, and I'll going to pass back to Lorna now, who's going to talk to you about, and in these times at the moment, I'm sure many of you are in a situation where you're having to do some teaching to people to students who are at home as well. So she's going to tell you a little bit about playing the game remotely. Thank you, Lorna.
Thank you. So we launched the game in July this year, or actually I think it was late June this year, and obviously that was in the middle of the first lockdown. Now the game was originally thought of as a game that you would play in classroom, but we have been able to adapt our resources to ensure that we can also play this game through a variety of different platforms, so much in the same way that you might use Kahoot in a virtual lesson. So for a remote session, very similar to the classroom setting, students use their personal devices to answer questions in the focus phase. And for that reason, students, if you are playing remotely, would require a personal device, whether that's a laptop, a phone, or a tablet on which to play the game. Each student should also have their headphones as well. What is slightly different from playing the game in the classroom is that you also need access to an online teaching platform. So something that's been approved by your school, whether that's Zoom, Skype, or Teams, so that you can share the classroom screen. And by extension, students therefore require a second device from which to access the lesson itself. So you have a screen to access the lesson and therefore the teacher screen, and then a separate, perhaps smaller device from which to access the app itself to play the game in the focus phase. And obviously, students also need internet access. So that can be something that's a little bit more difficult to coordinate, but the platform will give you a little warning, whether that's in the classroom or in a remote session, as to who's logged in and who has successfully accessed the internet. So no worries there either. We've also developed a range of supporting materials to help explain the process of registering. I think Domini is going to walk you through.
Yeah, I'll talk you through the supporting materials. I noticed as well, we had two questions come up. One about, is it suitable to play one-on-one? To be honest, as we explain, there's the challenge phase, which is really the fun part, where the pupils, well, the whole thing in our opinion is fun, but the challenge part is really motivating. The pupils love playing in teams, so I think that means really, I think one-on-one it would be difficult to create that team spirit. So it would be better with a couple of pupils. So with a small class, as you saw in the little clip at the beginning, we had a few students in the classroom, and it worked well. There was a buzz in the room, so we would recommend that. And also regarding Year 9 students, we trialed it. You saw the feedback, comments in German from the class in Cardiff. Now, they were Year 9 students and hadn't been doing German for long, had they, Lorna?
No, they did really well. They've been doing German for, I think, a term and a couple of weeks. So it was in the February of year 9 when they played the German quiz challenge. And what we did was we used the blueprint, which was just for the first couple of chapters. So it was more surrounding topics like hobbies, personal opinions, that sort of thing. So that was sort of more suited to that particular group. If you had a year 9 class that was covering other content, you could perhaps choose a different blueprint that suited the material a little better. But they managed to do very well. And I think the game is very, very accessible, and it's a lot of kind of true or false answers or gap filling. So they do have a helping hand. They're not left there out on their own. So yes, it would be possible, but you might want to think about adapting it to suit your scheme of work.
Yeah. And then we also had a question, and then we'll move on to the supporting materials. And apologies about the black boxes over the screen. Somebody, Samantha, you've just said there are black boxes over the PowerPoint. We have no idea where those black boxes have come from. They've mysteriously appeared. We tested this just as we were starting, and there weren't any black boxes, and we don't know how to get rid of the black boxes. So apologies, please bear with us. Hopefully you can hear us clearly enough. Just a quick question as well from Andrew about, is the quiz accessible for visually impaired people? Good question. And in all honesty, I don't know the answer to that. Emma, I don't know from your experience of playing with your pupils, did you have any visually impaired pupils in your classes?
No,
and have we? No.
No, I'm afraid not. No.
But we can certainly, that's a really good question. And we would like to look into that and follow that up to see what is possible, because it's something we do need to be mindful of. Anyway, without further ado, we'll come back, because I've noticed there's a few more questions coming up, some technical questions. I can see some people are having issues with Zoom, but not to worry, bear with us, and supporting material. So what is available to support you with the German quiz challenge? Well, we have 2 fun chapters for self-study for the students. So this is separate to the quiz, but related to the quiz, because it gives pupils the chance to find out more about the 5 friends who are all into skateboarding. So in the first chapter, you can see Die Freunde aus dem Skatepark. The pupils get to know a lot more about the 5 youngsters. So it really is a game that tracks the lives of these 5 youngsters. It's a story, and this gives them a good way into the quiz, the story. It sets the scene, sets the topics that are coming up, and the questions are all based on true or false format questions. So very accessible for students. And actually, this could be a great launch for the quiz before you even got around to playing the quiz with your pupils. So the first chapter is about the 5 friends, and the second chapter, Die Freunde im Ausland, is all about the young friends they're going to meet when they're traveling around Europe to all these interesting countries. And interestingly, the countries are all of those partners that were involved in the development of the project. So the youngsters are going to some really interesting countries, Finland, the Netherlands. So it's a great tool at the moment, especially as we can't travel that far at the moment, let's face it. So it's really a great intercultural tool as well that can open the youngsters' eyes and set the scene. So that's the additional materials. And the teacher doesn't have anything to do with those 2 standalone self-study chapters. So there's no testing element involved there. It's very relaxing for the students just to get into the game. Now, as a teacher, you might be thinking, well, where do I get started with this? What we've done is created a few supporting materials that can help you on your way. So as Emma mentioned already, there's a full great game script available on the website, and you've got the link to that on that slide. It might be worth us putting that link in the chat. We'll do that before we end, because I know some of you might have the very strange black box has suddenly appeared, but we will make sure that's accessible for you. But the script is wonderful, and it also gives you all the answers highlighted in green, so you know what the right answers are. There's a vocab list, the German English vocab list, and some model examples of how that vocab's being used. Then there's the manual, which is quite a concise document which breaks down the game, how to get it going, set up as a teacher, how to get your pupils going, some frequently asked questions. So that's always a good starting place to look. In the manual, that's also available, and a quick start guide. So if you just want, in fact, I've got my quick start guide here, because I find this useful. It's on an A4, and you can quickly look at it if you want to remind yourself what you need to remember to have in place to try and reduce your stress in getting this set up. And there's also a new tutorial that we made in summertime on YouTube, which sets out the stages as well. So if you're a bit like me, you don't mind a manual, but you like to follow something and listen to something, this is also a useful tool, and we would encourage you to tune into that. And then, as with anything technical, if you have any issues, you can always get in touch with us. And on the next slide, we've got a bug fixes and troubleshooting. Now, we know things do go wrong technically. For example, sometimes when the app is being updated temporarily, there might be a minor glitch which is in the process of being sorted. So you might think, oh, what do I do? Of course, get in touch with us. It's always useful to send a print screen of that issue to help us, because as we said, we work closely with the company Ovos, and they're very good at supporting any of these technical issues. And we're also going to mention right at the end of the presentation our drop-in sessions that we're running. So every month we're running a drop-in session where you can do, as it says, drop in and talk to us about how it's going. Have you tried it? We also usually play a chapter together remotely, so everybody can try that out. But the best thing to do is basically have a go, have a little explore around the app yourselves before launching into it with your pupils. I'm going to hand back now to Emma, who is going to tell you a little bit more from the teacher's perspective, how she's found it.
I would like to urge you all actually just to test it out like I did with my year 10s. And someone asked previously, can you play it just with one person? Well, I think to test it out, that might be a good idea. Or maybe you'd want to play it if you've got a department meeting coming up, just play it with a group of people there and just have a go. And you know, maybe in the run up to Christmas, I don't know when you have your year 11 mocks, ours are in January, it might be nice just to take a chapter or two as revision, because it's listening, reading, it's GCSE type questions that are on there. So maybe test it out with your department and then have a go if you're feeling brave enough with some year 11s, instead of showing a film just before Christmas, although I'm sure there isn't time for that with year 11s, but with one of your classes, why not play the German quiz challenge and give yourself you know, an easy lesson. You really can just let them go and just you know, play the game and enjoy the challenge as well. And as I say, it's a fun lesson. So if you want one of those in the run up to Christmas, have a go at that. It's highly motivational. Certainly all the students who have played it in my classes have really enjoyed it, and they've given really positive feedback as well. And as well as that, of course, for you teachers, it's a possibility to collect some assessment data too. So on your screen, you can see exactly where they went wrong, and it really gives you an overview of the class, those people who are maybe struggling on the listening or on the reading, or what sections, maybe some vocabulary work that you can do with them later. But so I would urge you, please do, just give it a go. Just, with someone in the department, at a department meeting, play it once, and then you'll feel happier then about playing it with the class in the future. Thank you. I'd like to go back, actually, I'm going to pass back to Domini now, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the drop-in sessions, because we realise that for some people it's just a bit nerve-wracking. So these are ideal for someone who, if you are thinking about using this in the classroom. Thank you, Domini.
Yeah, the drop-in. So our next drop-in session is on Wednesday. They take place, for an hour. And it's just designed, it's not like this presentation where we run through a presentation, it's very interactive. So we will start by inviting those present to share their experiences so far. Some people have had a go at playing it, some people haven't. It doesn't matter if you haven't, because as I've already said, we usually play a chapter to give you a flavour. Yes, these black boxes are certainly very interesting. I noticed somebody made a comment in the chats as well. Apologies about that. We have no idea what's happening there, but we're nearly there. We're nearly at the end of our presentation. So thanks for bearing with us. So do sign up. Where can you sign up? You need to sign up on the Goethe-Institut London website. You can come through by following that link there. So we really hope to see you on Wednesday, or if you can't make that Wednesday, there's one coming up in December. You're very welcome to come to as many as you want to, and we're always really happy to hear feedback from teachers about the game. So what's the cost? It's a free app. There's no cost. So it's free to download. All the materials are free. We hope to make them as accessible to everyone as possible. And a few questions came up as well about disabilities. It's an app. It does require students to use a device, a computer, a laptop, a mobile device. There's a listening element of the game. So there's listening exercises, listening comprehensions for the students to do. So they do, to take part in those aspects of the German Quiz Challenge, they do need to be able to hear the youngsters talking and asking questions of one another. They need to be able to see the characters and read. There's reading comp as well. I think, as already has been mentioned, it's also a springboard to, so the youngsters are talking about themselves, topics that are of interest to them, the environment, traveling, poverty. So these are topics that can be explored further, and you could definitely build on the topics in your class away from the computer. So I mean, we've all spent so much time in front of the computer. I know, but there are things you can do around the characters to explore the characters in other ways in your classes. If it's not possible for all to take part in the listening comprehensions or whatever. So, and the characters are really fun characters, and as we said, in the additional resources, there's 2 standalone self-study chapters where the students learn more about them. They have profiles of the youngsters that they're learning about, the 5 youngsters. So let's see if there's any. We've got about 5 minutes left. Well, another good question about, well, year 8 pupils. If they're in their 2nd year of learning German, well, I don't know what you think, Emma, but if they've been doing German for 2 years, why not?
I don't see any reason why not. And, you know, I can say to you, they can have a go. And in the end, in the challenge phase, the questions are so simple, you know, asking about the capital city, or asking about, you know, a particular, something to do with football, or something to do with the cultural side of things. When is St. Nicholas, for example, which they would have covered probably in year 7. So, you know, the challenge phase is certainly very, very accessible. And then they can have a go at the listening and the reading. I mean, you know, why not give it a go? And also, as a teacher, you know, what we've been saying a lot today, you can have a look at the transcript. So maybe have a look at the transcript for, say, if you chose to do chapter 1, which is probably the most accessible for year 8, have a look through and think to yourself, you know, how much of this vocabulary would they get? And if you think they could get a large proportion of it, why not give it a go? And as I said, pre-Christmas, you know, instead of showing a film to year 8, why not have a go and say, look, this app is meant to be for 10 and 11, years 10 and 11. You're only year 8, you've only been learning German since year 7, but are you up for a challenge? Let's have a go. And you know what they're like, they love a challenge, and to think that they're doing some GCSE work as well, yeah, why not? Yeah.
Are there any more questions before we end? We've got 3 minutes of our room left. We hope you found this interesting, and we thank you for joining us this afternoon. We hope you also can try this out, and it's good to have a little explore before you decide to do it with your pupils. So certainly have a look at the additional resources, and we hope you receive our newsletter from the Goethe-Institut, actually, because every month, normally once a month, we send out a newsletter with all updates about our events, our activities, our programs, and we've got some really interesting activities taking place coming up actually before Christmas. They're all online at the moment. Usually, you know, we would welcome school groups into the Goethe-Institut London in South Kensington, in case you're wondering where we are. We show films, we do various activities in our library. Obviously at the moment, in these tricky times, we're not able to do that, but we've got a lot of really interesting online events coming up, and we hope you can join us. And Lorna's just put the link to the sign up to the newsletter. And we really hope you can join us at another event soon. And we hope to see you in one of our drop-ins, and there will be every month. And just one final, I've just noticed another question from Lucy. Can the game be played on a computer in a browser? Yes, it can. It absolutely can. That's and in our teacher's handbook, it gives you that alternative as well. We would just say do it in Google Chrome or Firefox, not Internet Explorer. That doesn't really work very well. So it needs to be Chrome or Fox. What's it called? Mozilla Firefox.
Mozilla Firefox.
Yeah. So well, we hope you have fun with the German quiz challenge, and we wish you a good rest of the evening and weekend, and enjoy the language show. It was lovely to, I was going to say it's lovely to see you. We can't actually see you, but you know what we mean. Take care, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.